Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Indian troops have martyred 3 more Kashmiris, raising the toll to 7 in the last 24 hours. The civilians were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Pulwama district. Yesterday, the occupying forces martyred 4 youths during a similar operation in the Shopian district. The occupied valley has been under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 390 days. India has registered the world's highest COVID-19 cases, with more than 76,000 people tested positive in the past 24 hours, taking the tally to over 3.4 million. India's death toll has exceeded 62,000, with over 1,000 fatalities since yesterday. Meanwhile, Pakistan has recorded 1 death, the lowest since start of the outbreak in the country. The death toll from coronavirus worldwide has exceeded 837,000 as the number of infections surpasses 24.7 million. The EU has threatened Turkey with fresh sanctions unless progress is made in reducing tensions with Greece and Cyprus in the eastern Mediterranean. The EU's top diplomat Joseph Borrell said the bloc wanted to give a serious chance to dialogue, but it is steadfast in its support for the member states Greece and Cyprus in the crisis. Belarus has threatened to cut off European transit routes across the country if EU sanctions are imposed on Minsk. President Alexander Lukashenko said he will block European countries shipping goods to Russia and divert Belarus exports through ports in Lithuania. Earlier, the EU threatened sanctions against Belarus over Lukashenko's crackdown against the protesters over rigging allegations. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Indian troops have martyred 3 more Kashmiris, raising the toll to 7 in the last 24 hours. The civilians were martyred during a cordon and search operation in the Pulwama district. The troops have sealed all the entry and exit points of the area. Police said the operation is still underway in the vicinity. Yesterday, the occupying forces martyred 4 youths during a similar operation in the Shopian district. The occupied valley has been under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the past 390 days. India has registered the world's highest COVID-19 cases, with more than 76,000 people tested positive in the past 24 hours. The Indian Health Ministry has reported over 1,000 fatalities since yesterday. Globally, the coronavirus death count has exceeded 837,000 as the number of infections surpasses 24.7 million. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic continues to wreak havoc across the globe as several regions face a re-emergence of the deadly disease. The virus has shifted its focus to India, where the country is reporting 62,550 deaths total, with more than 3.4 million cases so far. In the US, a majority of the states have rejected the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's new guidance on COVID-19 testing. Canada will extend measures barring most foreign travelers from entering the country amid efforts to contain the virus. Peru, reporting one of the deadliest outbreaks in the region, is set to test vaccines in September in an effort to secure faster access when they are approved.
At this moment, it is already confirmed that Sinopharm China will do tests here in the country. They will start on September 8th and there will be 6,000 volunteers. Johnson & Johnson has confirmed that it will start the test on September 24th with 4,000 volunteers. We are contacting other laboratories from Great Britain and other countries, which would allow us to immunize 70% of the population.
In Europe, France has reported its highest post-lockdown daily cases since March, with more than 7,300 infections being recorded overnight. Hungary has announced to close its borders to foreigners from September 1st to curb the rise of coronavirus infections. Meanwhile, Australia's most populous state of Victoria has recorded its lowest number of infections in 8 weeks.
We have 18,903 confirmed aggregate cases of coronavirus in Victoria. That's 94 more cases since yesterday's update. There have, I'm sad to report, now been 513 Victorians who have lost their life due to this global pandemic.
Mainland China has reported only 9 imported cases as the country logged no domestic transmissions. South Korea has reported 323 new COVID-19 cases over the past 24 hours as officials urge citizens to abide by social distancing measures.
In Pakistan, the COVID-19 daily deaths have reached an all-time low with 1 fatality in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says 319 more people tested positive for the virus overnight, taking the tally to over 295,000. The countrywide death toll stands at 6,284. The ministry said the recovery rate from the disease is over 94%. It said more than 280,000 people have recovered from the disease, while 642 patients are in critical condition. The ministry said the number of active cases is below 9,000. Sindh remains the worst hit province, witnessing nearly 129,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 96,000 cases so far. The EU has threatened Turkey with fresh sanctions unless progress is made in reducing tensions with Greece and Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean. This is the bloc's first direct response since Ankara's tensions with the neighboring countries have intensified. More in this report.
Oil exploration row between Turkey and Greece in the Eastern Mediterranean has worsened as Ankara continues its survey activities. The European Union's threat to Turkey comes on heels of calls by Greece. The EU's top diplomat Joseph Borrell said the bloc wanted to give a serious chance to dialogue, but it is steadfast in its support for member states Greece and Cyprus in the crisis.
That there is a growing frustration in the face of Turkey's behavior, and that the Council express a political consensus to ask the relevant Council working groups to speed up their work.
The countries in the bloc have weighed their full support for the member state Greece while committing to diffuse tensions. France's President Emmanuel Macron says he has taken a tough stance with regard to Turkey's actions in the waters and set red lines because Ankara respects actions, not words. The escalation in the conflict comes after a relative calm for a few months brokered by German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The Chancellor says all EU countries have an obligation to support Greece in its dispute with Turkey. Merkel said Berlin is committed to preventing an escalation of the dispute.
I believe that all of us as member states of the European Union must of course take Greece's rights and concerns very seriously and support them when they are in the right. Nevertheless, I have always argued for the situation not to escalate further, and to an extent that is only possible if we keep talking to both sides. The disputes there over the distribution of the economic zones can only be resolved together. Germany is making efforts in this regard.
While international community condemns Turkey's actions, Ankara is set to claim the disputed waters for itself. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan discussed the issue with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He said Ankara will continue to protect its rights and interests everywhere.
The UN says it has received a number of credible reports that migrants reaching Greek soil or territorial waters are being turned to Turkey. In a statement, the UN's refugee agency called for an investigation into the reports as it considers Athens' move a breach of international law. The agency cited one report out of many which came from a German naval vessel operating in the Aegean Sea. According to the UN, about 11,500 asylum seekers have reached Greece so far this year, many crossing the sea from Turkey. Meanwhile, a stranded Louis Michel boat carrying migrants in the Mediterranean Sea has asked the European Union for urgent assistance. The boat has asked Italy and Malta for help, but they have not responded yet. Belarus has threatened to cut off European transit routes across the country if EU sanctions are imposed on Minsk. President Alexander Lukashenko said he will block European countries shipping goods to Russia and divert Belarus exports through ports in Lithuania. Lukashenko says the EU has disregarded Minsk's importance as a key trade linkage. Belarus is a major overland route for European goods bound for Russia and the main energy link between Russia and Europe. Earlier, the EU threatened sanctions against Belarus over Lukashenko's crackdown against the protesters over rigging allegations. Meanwhile, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has condemned the mass detention of over 50 journalists in Minsk. In the United States, thousands of people rallied in Washington, D.C., calling for racial justice and police reforms. This follows unrest over the police shooting of a black man, Jacob Blake, in Wisconsin. This report has the details.
On a hot, humid day in the U.S. Capitol, attendees of the protest lined along Constitution Avenue early in the morning amid a heavy police presence. The march coincides with 57th anniversary of Martin Luther King's iconic speech, "I Have a Dream." The 1963 event was credited with spurring the passage of the Civil Rights Act, outlawing segregation. Yet today, families of the U.S.'s most known victims of police discrimination and brutality had to make an impassioned plea for justice.
I got it. I got it. We're gonna have court right now. Guilty. Yeah. Guilty. Guilty. Racism against all of us. Guilty. 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 Racism against Trayvon Martin. We find them guilty. Guilty. Racism against George Floyd.
The demonstration has been dubbed "Get Your Knee Off Our Necks" in reference to George Floyd, who was killed by police in May. Civil rights leader, the Reverend Al Sharpton, who led the crowd, said they are determined to bring about a change.
So we didn't just come today to have a show. Demonstration without legislation will not lead to change. We didn't come out and stand in this heat because we didn't have nothing to do. We come to let you know if we will come out by these numbers in the heat and stand in the heat, that we will stand in the polls all day long.
The UN Human Rights Office said the images of the shooting of Jacob Blake show that police had used excessive force. The spokesman for the office, Rupert Colville, said the discriminatory use of force did not appear to comply with international standards. The US has been seeing unrest in several cities since the custodial killing of Floyd, but police brutality continues.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Turkey says it is determined to preserve the de-escalation zone in Syria's Idlib despite ceasefire violations by Damascus. The presidential spokesman made these remarks following a meeting with visiting U.S. Special Envoy for Syria, James Jeffrey, in Istanbul. In a statement, Ibrahim Kalin said any economic or military support to the terrorist groups in Syria is unacceptable. He said there should be a collaborative effort in the fight against ISIS and all the terrorist groups in Syria. Both the parties agreed that the work of Syrian Constitutional Committee should be boosted. They said the joint efforts must be stepped up to ensure the voluntary and safe return of migrants. Syria has been entangled in a civil war since early 2011 when the Syrian regime cracked down on the protests. The UN says under the current circumstances, no mediation efforts can prevent the escalation between Palestinian groups and Israel. In a tweet, the UN Special Envoy for Middle East Peace, Nikolai Mladenov, urged both the Palestinian groups and Israel to decrease tensions in Gaza Strip. He said Israel's tightening of the blockade in Gaza is making life unbearable. The envoy called on Israel to restore UN fuel deliveries to Gaza for electricity. Mladenov said while the situation in the territory deteriorates, there is a rapid increase in COVID-19 cases among the population. The Israeli army has intensified its raids on Gaza over the past week, along with tightening a fuel blockade. Anti-Muslim rights flare in southern Sweden after a far-right Danish leader, Rasmus Paludan, was banned from attending a rally held to desecrate Quran. Police say a crowd angry over the ban gathered in streets of Malmö and threw stones at the officers. A spokesperson for police said the demonstration was connected to an incident in which protesters burned a copy of the Islamic holy book. He said police arrested 3 protesters for inciting a racial hatred. The authorities say police arrested Paludan, suspecting he would break the law by his hate speech. Paludan has been banned from entering Sweden for 2 years. The Saudi-led military coalition says it destroyed an explosive-laden drone launched by the Houthis. Coalition spokesman Colonel Turki al-Maliki said the drone was fired towards a Najran city in southern Saudi Arabia. He says Houthis continue to violate human rights by deliberately targeting civilian settlements with explosive drones. The rebels have not commented on the development yet. Cross-border attacks by Yemeni rebels have escalated since May, when a truce prompted by the coronavirus pandemic expired. In late June, missiles reached the Saudi capital Riyadh and the coalition retaliated with airstrikes. Mali's West African neighbors have told the country's army to transfer power to a transitional government and hold elections within a year. In exchange, the 15-nation bloc has committed to gradually lifting the sanctions. The group has shut borders with Mali following last week's ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Chairperson of the bloc, Niger President Mohamedou Issoufou, said Mali's transitional president and the prime minister must be civilians. He said they will be banned from running in the next legislative and presidential elections. The region's leaders are scheduled to meet again on the 7th of September in Niger's capital, Niamey. Russia says its nationals traveling overseas can face persecution from U.S. intelligence agencies. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said the nationals should be vigilant while traveling to the U.S. after the arrest of a Russian citizen, Yegor Kryshkov. The statement said the U.S. law enforcement agencies continue to arrest Russians around the world. It also said nationals who refuse to plead guilty are handed prison sentences. The ministry said Russian diplomats are doing everything to assist Russian nationals for ensuring their legitimate rights. As many as 56 such incidents have taken place since 2008, with 6 occurring in 2019. Earlier, the U.S. Department of Justice said Kryshkov has been arrested in Los Angeles over conspiracy to intentionally causing damage to a protected computer. In the U.S., the death toll from Hurricane Laura has risen to 14 across the southern states of Louisiana and Texas. Officials say around 8,000 homes were destroyed in the 2 states. In Louisiana, 5 died from carbon monoxide poisoning from gas electricity generators, 4 from trees falling, while 1 person drowned. In Texas, a man was killed when a tree hit his home, while 3 others succumbed to possible carbon monoxide poisoning in Port Arthur. The hurricane has now been downgraded to a tropical storm, but heavy rain is still reported in several states. Meanwhile, the death toll from the storms which earlier hit Haiti has risen from 10 to 31, while 8 people are still missing. Black Panther actor Chadwick Boseman has died at the age of 43 after a 4-year-long battle against colon cancer. The actor's publicist has announced the death of the blockbuster Black Panther's King T'Challa on his social media accounts. His publicist said Boseman died at his home in Los Angeles with his wife and family by his side. Boseman's Black Panther is one of the highest-grossing films and was nominated for 6 Oscars. The movie won 3 Academy Awards. In a statement following Boseman's death, Martin Luther King III said the actor brought history to life with his roles. The late actor originated the Black Panther role 2 years earlier in Marvel's Captain America and reprised the part twice in 2018's and 2019's Avengers series. Boseman also played black icons Jackie Robinson and James Brown. The world's most expensive sheep has been sold in Scotland for over $490,000. The sheep named Double Diamond. The initial opening bid was $14,000 but quickly increased. The previous record was set in 2009 when a Texel called Devon Vale Perfection was sold for over $300,000. Texel sheep are believed to have come from island of Texel, one of the islands northwest of Holland. The breed now dominates the UK sheep industry. Another weather situation from around the globe. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.